Diane sat in front of her laptop, staring at the email that confirmed everything. Your role at the firm is being restructured. Effective immediately. Restructured. A polite way of saying replaced. Her hands trembled as she scrolled down. There it was, the AI division expansion announcement. Introducing Lexi, our revolutionary contract review system, designed to optimize efficiency, reduce costs, and eliminate human error. Human error. Was that what she had been reduced to? A liability? The next line made her stomach twist. The system has been trained using past case victories from our top attorneys, including Diane Hayes. Her own work. Fed into a machine. Her life's knowledge, turned into code. She slammed the laptop shut. Her breath was short, her vision blurred. For the first time in 30 years, she didn't know who she was anymore. Diane sat frozen, her mind struggling to process what she had just read. Her entire career, her wins, her strategies, her instincts, fed into an algorithm. A machine now knew how she thought, how she built arguments, how she closed deals. And the worst part? They didn't even need her permission. Her phone buzzed. Matt. She ignored it. Instead, she opened her firm's internal case database. One by one, she searched for her past cases. The multi-million-dollar settlements, the airtight contract negotiations, they were all still there. But something had changed. Each case file now had a Lexi tag. Her breath hitched. The AI had been trained on her work. The realization sent a wave of fury through her. They hadn't just taken her job. They had stolen her mind. Matt's name flashed on her phone again. This time, she picked up. Diane, you need to meet me. Her voice was cold. Why? To watch the firm celebrate my replacement? Matt exhaled. No. To show you something. They met in a coffee shop downtown, a far cry from the marble-clad firm lobby where they had spent years strategizing over legal battles. Matt pulled out his laptop and spun it toward her. They think they've replaced you. But they haven't. On the screen was a live demo of Lexi. Diane tensed. A contract appeared, a real estate deal similar to one she had closed 5 years ago. The AI scanned the document. A few seconds later, it highlighted all potential risks. Diane watched as it identified boilerplate language, common dispute areas, jurisdiction concerns. But then, it missed something. Her eyes narrowed. Run it again. Matt clicked. Same result. Diane let out a slow breath. Lexi was smart. But it wasn't perfect. It's missing discretionary clauses, she muttered. Any junior associate would know that's where negotiation leverage is buried. Matt smirked. Not any junior associate. Just you. She stared at the screen, realization dawning. Lexi could process. But it couldn't think. And that? That was the opening she needed. Listen, Matt said, leaning in. There's a company, Lexilogic. They're hiring legal experts to train AI. They don't want to replace lawyers. They want to enhance them. Diane hesitated. Working with AI? The very thing that had just destroyed her career? Matt sighed. I know what you're thinking. But if you don't do this, someone else will. Someone who won't fight for what actually matters. She clenched her jaw. She had spent her whole career believing law was about human judgment. But if AI was inevitable, then maybe the only way to protect that judgment was to be the one shaping the future. Matt slid a business card across the table. Meet with them. Just once. Diane stared at the card, her fingers curling around the edges. She wasn't done fighting. Diane hesitated outside the towering glass building of Lexilogic, gripping the business card Matt had given her. This wasn't a law firm. There were no mahogany desks, no paralegals bustling with case files. It was a tech company, filled with people who didn't think like lawyers. People who saw contracts as data, not strategy. She took a steadying breath and stepped inside. The office was a sharp contrast to the world she had spent decades in: open spaces, endless rows of monitors, young engineers in casual clothes discussing algorithms like they were debating case law. At the center of it all was Julia Lin, LexiLogic's head of legal AI integration, a woman at least 2 decades younger than Diane, but exuding the confidence of someone who knew she was shaping the future. "You must be Diane," Julia said, shaking her hand with a firm grip. "Matt spoke highly of you." Diane studied her, searching for condescension, for that look younger professionals often gave older colleagues, the one that said, "You don't belong here." But Julia's expression was unreadable. She motioned for Diane to follow her into a sleek conference room where a large screen flickered to life. "Before we go any further," Julia said, "I want you to see something." A contract appeared on the screen. Diane recognized the format instantly: standard merger documents, dense with legalese. The AI processed it in seconds, highlighting key clauses, potential risks, areas of concern. It was precise, efficient. Then Diane spotted the flaw. It missed jurisdictional discrepancies, she murmured, eyes scanning the text. "And here, this non-compete clause? It's enforceable in one state but illegal in another." She looked at Julia. "The AI flagged the obvious issues, but it doesn't see the traps." Julia leaned forward. "That's why we need people like you. AI doesn't think like a lawyer. But you do." Diane felt the old instincts kicking in, the sharp, analytical mind that had once made her one of the best in corporate law. But then doubt crept in. "And what happens when it learns everything I know?" she asked. "What's stopping it from making me obsolete all over again?" Julia didn't hesitate. "AI doesn't replace strategy. It enhances execution. We don't need another contract processor. We need someone who understands what the law actually means, someone who can teach the AI what it can't see." Diane looked at the contract on the screen again, the lines of text glowing in a way that almost felt mocking. This wasn't just about keeping up. This was about making sure the next wave of technology didn't erase people like her. Slowly, she nodded. "All right," she said. "Show me how it works." The next few weeks were brutal. Diane had spent decades mastering the law, but now she was drowning in a world of data models, machine learning protocols, and neural networks. She felt like a first-year associate again, except this time, instead of senior partners, she was surrounded by software engineers half her age who spoke in a language she barely understood. Her first day, she sat through a product demo, watching the AI process contracts at a speed no human could match. The engineers around her marveled at its efficiency, but Diane saw the cracks immediately. "This non-compete clause," she pointed out. "It's flagging it as a low-risk clause, but it contradicts the labor laws in certain jurisdictions." The lead engineer, a young man with noise-canceling headphones around his neck, raised an eyebrow. "The model is trained on precedent. Statistically, it's enforced 78% of the time." Diane leaned forward. "And the other 22%? Silence. The AI didn't know. Because it didn't think. It calculated." That was the moment Diane knew she had an advantage. AI could recognize patterns, but it didn't understand nuance. It couldn't read between the lines, anticipate manipulation, or negotiate the way a seasoned lawyer could. But then came the hard part, teaching it. Diane was tasked with helping train LexiLogic's AI to catch the same loopholes she had built a career spotting. But the process was frustrating, and deeply unsettling. Every correction she made, every lesson she taught the system, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was handing over the very expertise that made her valuable. One night, exhausted, she slammed her laptop shut, rubbing her temples. "What's wrong?" Julia asked from across the table. Diane exhaled. "You don't get it. Every adjustment I make, this thing gets better. Smarter. What happens when it doesn't need me anymore?" Julia studied her for a long moment. "Do you remember when calculators became mainstream in law offices?" Diane frowned. "That's different." "Is it?" Julia leaned back. Lawyers who refused to adapt got left behind. The ones who figured out how to use technology, not fight it? They became indispensable. Diane stared at her, the weight of those words sinking in. This wasn't about winning against AI. It was about learning how to play a different game. And Diane wasn't ready to lose. So, she stopped resisting. She started learning. Within weeks, Diane had transformed the AI model. She rewrote its logic, trained it to recognize the gray areas that algorithms failed to see. She helped create a hybrid system, one that blended AI speed with human intuition. Law firms began noticing. They wanted her expertise. Not just to use AI, but to understand how to control it. Soon, Diane wasn't just another employee at Lexilogic. She was shaping the future of legal AI. But then came the real test. A major law firm, one that had laid off dozens of senior attorneys in favor of automation, was hit with a high-profile lawsuit. Their AI-driven contract review had missed a crucial clause, leading to a multi-million-dollar disaster. And now? They needed Diane. Not as a lawyer. As the expert who could fix the mess AI had created. Diane walked into the firm's glass conference room, the same firm that had replaced her with an algorithm. The managing partner, the same man who had dismissed her, looked uncomfortable. "Diane," he said, forcing a smile. "I hear you've been doing impressive work." She folded her arms. "I bet you have." He cleared his throat. "We'd like to bring you on as a consultant. Help us integrate AI more effectively." Diane let the silence hang. She wasn't desperate. They were. Finally, she reached into her bag and slid a contract across the table. "My terms," she said simply. The managing partner picked it up, his face twitching as he read the number at the bottom. Diane smiled. For years, she had worked for them. Now? They worked for her. They replaced her with AI. But in the end? She became the one thing AI could never replace. Diane sat at her desk in the Lexilogic office, staring at the glowing contract on her screen. AI had flagged the usual risks, ambiguous clauses, potential jurisdiction conflicts, but something was off. She rubbed her temples. The model had been improving too fast. Each time she corrected an error, it learned faster than before. What had started as a system that still needed human oversight was now beginning to eliminate the need for people like her. Her inbox dinged. Urgent meeting, AI integration expansion plan. She walked into the conference room, where Julia and the top engineers were already deep in discussion. "Our next phase," Julia announced, "is launching AI-assisted arbitration. We're pitching to insurance companies, medical providers, and financial institutions. If this works, AI won't just be reviewing contracts. It will be enforcing them." Diane felt her stomach drop. "You mean AI will make binding legal decisions?" Julia nodded, her eyes gleaming. "Think about it, no delays, no human bias, no overworked lawyers dragging out cases." Diane's pulse pounded. "And what happens when the AI gets it wrong? What happens when it misses something?" Julia gave her a knowing look. "Then we fix it. That's why you're here." For the first time since joining Lexilogic, Diane wasn't sure she wanted to be here. That night, she struggled to sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her own expertise being fed into a machine that was learning how to replace her. She thought about the younger associates at her old firm, the ones who had been so eager to embrace AI. She thought about Matt's warning, "If you don't do this, someone else will." But was she helping lawyers adapt to technology? Or was she helping destroy the profession altogether? Her phone buzzed. "Lena." She answered, trying to steady her voice. "Hey, sweetheart." "Mom," Lena's voice was strained, "I don't know what to do." Diane sat up. "What happened?" Lena hesitated. "It's about a patient. His insurance denied coverage for a life-saving procedure." Diane's stomach clenched. "On what grounds?" Lena took a shaky breath. An AI system reviewed his claim and flagged it as unnecessary treatment. Diane felt the blood drain from her face. What insurance company? A pause. Then Lena whispered, one of Lexilogic's clients. Diane's breath hitched. She had trained that AI. And now? It was making life and death decisions. Diane stormed into the Lexilogic office the next morning. She barely paused before pushing open Julia's door. The AI is rejecting life-saving claims, she said, her voice like ice. This is beyond contract review. You're playing with people's lives. Julia sighed, as if she had expected this. Diane, you know as well as I do that insurance companies have always denied claims. The difference now is that AI removes inefficiencies. It processes cases faster, more consistently. Diane clenched her fists. Faster doesn't mean better. You're treating human suffering like a statistical model. Julia leaned back in her chair. You trained it, Diane. You made it this good. And now you don't like what it can do? Diane's heart pounded. This was the moment of reckoning. She had a choice. She could walk away, pretend she never saw the email Lena sent her, let AI reshape the legal system unchecked. Or she could fight back. But not from the outside. From within. Diane didn't quit Lexilogic. She turned the system against itself. Over the next few months, she worked in secret, embedding safeguards into the AI, rules that forced it to flag unethical contract clauses, detect exploitative terms, expose loopholes that companies had used for years to manipulate consumers. She fed the system something it wasn't designed to process, human ethics. And just as Lexilogic was preparing for its biggest pitch yet, a proposal to fully automate legal arbitration in corporate disputes, Diane dropped the bombshell. At the investor presentation, Julia stood in front of the board, showing off Lexilogic's latest advancements. Our AI arbitration model is ready to replace slow, expensive legal processes, she declared. We estimate a 70% reduction in contract disputes within the first year. Then Diane spoke. Except there's a flaw. Julia stiffened. Diane, this isn't the time. Diane cut her off. The AI isn't eliminating legal disputes. It's automating corporate interests while suppressing claims that should be reviewed. It's making decisions without human oversight. That's not progress. That's corporate dictatorship. The investors murmured, exchanging glances. One finally spoke. Are you saying this AI is legally unsound? Diane smiled, because she had made sure of it. Yes, she said simply. And I have the data to prove it. The presentation collapsed. The investors withdrew. The project was suspended indefinitely. And just like that, Lexilogic's biggest power move fell apart. Julia stared at her, cold fury in her eyes. You planned this. Diane met her gaze, unflinching. You built the weapon, she said. I just made sure it couldn't be used against us. The fallout was immediate. Lexilogic scrambled to salvage its reputation. Companies that had blindly trusted AI to replace legal professionals backed away. And Diane? She walked away from Lexilogic on her own terms. Law firms, the same ones that had once dismissed her, now sought her expertise in AI regulation, legal ethics, and oversight. She didn't just adapt to technology. She controlled it. 1 year later, as she sat on a panel discussing AI regulation and law, a familiar face approached her. The managing partner from her old firm. Diane, he said, clearing his throat. We miscalculated. We'd like to bring you back as a senior advisor. Diane didn't even have to think. She smiled. You don't need an advisor. You need a regulator. And trust me, you can't afford me. She turned away, walking off the stage as the audience erupted in applause. They tried to erase her. Instead, she rewrote the rules.